we're waiting, the board has now returned from executive session. Next up on the agenda is approval of the minutes for August 2nd, 2023, the business meeting, and August 16th, 2023, business meeting / work study session. Do I have a motion?
I actually have some corrections, and I know you asked that we submit those ahead of time, but I actually wanted a little bit more of a discussion on that. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
I must do a few things. Okay. There's just a few places, Krista, where I feel we could have offered a little bit more of a clear picture. And I know that I do not envy your job having to type while we're up here deliberating. But under the Native American Education Specialist.
Tell us what page, please, and.
Page 12.
Okay.
The only thing about my comment was that it just said, Ms. Reed asked if our academic strategies teachers are struggling to help our Native students. And when you go back, I actually asked who was covering this responsibility, and then I was told that it was the academic strategies teachers. Then I asked if we were finding that they were not able to help those students, and then I was told that they are actually exceeding expectations and doing really great. And so then that's when I asked if we were not kind of doubling up on duties and grouping students unnecessarily. So that's one place that I felt there could have been a little bit more clarity. And then on page 17, under the Four Peaks AC issues, the only comment that it has for me was about asking Dr. Jagodzinski to reach out to the HVAC vendors that I shared with him. But I also made several comments about considering the FTS experiences with the AC companies, because I think that that's very important for the public to know, and when they read through this, it doesn't reflect things accurately. And then with public comments, and again, I know the goal is to keep them very concise. However, when it just simply says Matthew Corrigan shared his opinion on financial trust with the community, it doesn't really paint a picture that he questioned the trust with the district and on our financial responsibility, and that he was going to be voting no on the bond because of that. And then it shared that Nancy Odasky shared her opinion on the need for the new library space. Reading that, you would not know that she was against the spending there because of our other needs. So I just think that there's some places that if we want to reflect things accurately, we need to maybe change the wording a little bit. And again, I know that you have so much going on, so I would appreciate that.
The minutes are just a very short summary. Krista actually puts a lot more in here than need be. The true minutes are the YouTube video that we record. So anybody who wants further information would need to look at that. But the minutes.
Do the recordings stay up perpetually? They're never removed?
They have not been removed. So.
Because I remember when I was just a commenter, I would go and look at the YouTube videos, and there's some that I can't find at this point. And then the other thing is, I think the meeting minutes do need to reflect, especially when it comes to like the public comments. If she wants to keep it just to that one line, she could say that, Nancy Odasky shared a negative opinion on the library, or that, Matthew Corrigan shared a negative thoughts on that. I mean, I don't like that either, because that's not great, but, I think it needs to be a little bit more accurate as to.
Yeah, it's meant to be a summary of the meeting, but as I said, the YouTube video, the online version is the capture of the meeting. So.
Does that meet the requirement?
It does. Because technically all she needs to give you is a summary of the votes. I mean, she really doesn't have to put in commentary at all.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the minutes? Hearing none, I move that we approve the minutes for August 2nd and August 16th.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
I have 4 yeas and 1 nay. Next up is informational reports, summary of current events. Dr. J.
Madam President, members of the board and guests. So a few things to share. One, excited that our Reteach program is off and running. We had tremendous success with that at the high school for many years, and we saw growth on our ACT scores this year, using it again last year. For the first time in the middle school, now that it's aligned 6-8, they started reteach last week. Dr. Wheeldryer has done a fantastic job of getting that off and running. And in conversation I've had with math teachers, it's going very well. That's where we kind of start and we build from there, but it is off and running 6 through 12 now. Reteach is taking place during the day in the elementary schedule. Mr. Wilkinson's team has done a good job of getting enrichment and intervention off the ground. I'm happy to share that our professional development sessions, I think, have been much better this year in comparison to years past. And part of that is we've had time to, this past year, look at what we do and try to improve upon it. We also have more time on Wednesdays, and there's also time built in the schedule now for teachers at each grade level to have additional grade level or PLC time. And the sessions so far have been, I think, really, really good. And so I'm happy with our principals that they're utilizing that time in a very good way. The district is doing one a month, which is also giving teachers some opportunity. We started a tech, kind of an opportunity for teachers on Wednesdays to come meet with Jared and myself. If they have tech issues, so they don't have to worry about putting in a ticket, they can just come on Wednesdays and get additional work done. If they work that out with their principal, they can come over for that. Student Advisory Board met for the first time last week, and it was good showing, and they were much more talkative this year than last year. And we talked about the new schedule, we talked about class offerings, and just feedback in general on how things are going. And I'm happy to share that the feedback was positive, and things were there. They gave some things they'd like to see as far as new classes and offerings for the future, but I was very excited to meet with them, and they're doing good work. I met with parents in coffee last, was that 2 days ago? And feedback, was that yesterday?
It was yesterday.
Feels like 2 days ago.
Schedule feedback was positive from parents as well, especially the new Innovate 21 Honors and Gifted program at the middle school. The teachers have done a really great job there, and the feedback was positive. Construction will be starting soon on the library. We're probably a few weeks out from them coming in and actually setting up, but it is going to be starting soon, and we've worked out the logistics with the principal to make sure that Kevin knows what's going to happen and his staff can be prepared. One last thing I just want to bring up, and Ms. Reed brought it up a minute ago. I was asked to reach out to the air conditioning companies. I did do that. Neither of them ever returned my calls, though, so I just want to let you know I did try. Okay? Thank you.
Library, high school textbooks.
Oh, yes, thank you, Krista. The high school textbook adoption committee has been working. There's a link on the website for the high school. Mr. Hartman has been working with the committee to select a book to go on display. That book will be going on display tomorrow for anyone to come take a look at and provide feedback.
What's the subject?
It is the human geography, human geography course. And with that, I conclude my comments.
Thank you. Next up is governing board reports. We'll start with you, Ms. Reed.
I went to the first coffee with Kane on 8/8. That was great. There was a decent turnout of people, and they were excited to hear what we're doing. I also made it to the coffee with Hartman and coffee with Kevin. I love that it's on a consistent day, and I was super upset that I had work scheduled on coffee with Wheeldryer, because that's like the one I have not been able to make it to yet. I will be there. And great turnout at each of those events, and I want to thank our administration for making themselves available to people, because I think that that's really important to our community. I made it to the back to school bash, which was so much fun. My kids loved it, and again, I'm super grateful to our administration for being such good sports with the dunk tank. I watched you guys get dunked over and over and over but the kids loved it. I mean, it was the cutest thing ever to see how excited they were to try and dunk you guys. And it kind of gave me an idea that maybe next year the board should volunteer as the PTO fundraiser for adult-only dunking, because I think not only would we get parents to come out, but I think we would have a decent community turnout as well. So it's just a thought.
We'll put you up first.
I'll do it.
Mrs. Settle?
I have nothing to report.
Mrs. Acker?
Well, I attended the coffees with each of the principals and with Dr. J yesterday. It was great going to the schools and getting tours and seeing how the classrooms were all active and working, and I got to see the middle school and the elementary, and they look gorgeous. So it was really nice, and I did attend the meeting on the book that's going to be adopted. I decided to hear what it was about, so it was really good committee that obviously knew what they were doing there, so it was nice. I did go to the grand opening of the football field, which is beautiful to see, and my husband made me leave after a short while because it was way too hot, so I did have to leave before they won completely, but they had scored the first point, so I was very pleased.
Mr. Sarr?
Nothing tonight.
I also went to the grand opening of the football field. It was really nice to see all the donors down on the field. I'd like to thank everybody that contributed to that, and, you know, watching our kids play their first game on that was amazing. Congratulations to the Falcons that they started off really strong with 2 wins of their football team. Unfortunately, last week didn't go in their favor, but hopefully they'll bring it back this Friday. And then I just want to say that I've talked to many teachers, especially at McDowell Mountain, and it's been really great to hear their feedback regarding the consolidation. I know they were very hesitant to move, even though their building needs a lot of improvement, and so they were torn because McDowell Mountain has been the home to so many, and there's a lot of memories there, but they are loving their new space. Teachers that actually hadn't thought about leaving our district are so glad that they stayed. And so I just want to thank our staff for really starting the year off strong and rolling with the punches when it came to moving, because moving is not easy. I don't ever want to move my own house, let alone a whole classroom and then a whole school. So just thank you to our staff for all the hard work that they put in and being cooperative and easygoing with that move. So, okay. Next up are the reports, student activity and auxiliary accounts, unaudited financial report, site council minutes, and current enrollment. Are there any questions or comments regarding these reports?
I did have a question,
Okay.
and it's a bummer one. What happened with our enrollment? What caused it? I mean, I know that the number that was presented at the coffee with Kane was an unofficial. You said we have to wait for our 10-day drop, but that drop was a bit more than I expected. Do we have reasons that was such a big?
Well, I can tell you that we expected to lose 75 students, and we only, at this point, are down 30, so we've made up 45 of them. We will have additional preschoolers coming in as they turn 3. I know there's some already waiting on the list to turn 3. And I firmly believe that we will make up the rest by the end of the year like we did last year, and we'll finish, I think, flat, which is what we predicted. Tyler predicted a flat when he did the budget. But it's not, it's really just move-outs where nobody calls, 10-day drops because they don't show up. Pretty typical of a start of the year. That's why I said they're unofficial. But I'm still optimistic considering how many, not only how many we've already made up, but then also I've reached out to other superintendents, and kindergarten numbers are down across the state. I also feel that I think the work we did, I'm hoping, and I've said this for a long time, that I didn't expect to see it this year. I expect to see it next year because the building's not done. And when we did all the tours and we did all the kindergarten registration nights, we were at 2 different sites. They weren't prepared. They didn't look the way they're supposed to look. So I do expect it to go up, but that's where we're at.
Okay, and then one last thing. One thing that you did that I really appreciated when you first got in here was you called some of those families that had left. Are you planning to do that with this?
The registrars, if a student leaves that is not moving, if it's something that is avoidable, I call. If it's, we're moving to Alaska, I don't call.
Okay.
But typically, all the ones I've seen are really moving out of our town or out of our area. And the few that I've seen that have moved to a different school, either the principal is called or I call.
Thank you.
And one comment I'll just make about the enrollment is, in past years, we've always gone off of Power Schools, but for some reason, the Power School program just doesn't seem to give us an accurate number, and there were a lot of discrepancies if you followed the numbers of how many kids we started with, how many left, how many enrolled. So that's why your report looks a little different, is I've asked for actual body counts. So we've gone back to the basics, and it's literally just a body count. So these numbers are accurate.
The one in our board
The
packet.
one in our board packet.
Is that information that's available publicly anywhere? Like, is there somewhere where people can go to be like, oh, how many students accurately?
It changes. So, what'd you say?
The board packet?
The board packet.
Okay.
Can I-
It changes, and so like, even if you go to like Good Schools or, you know,
Yeah.
all those online things, like, it's funny because like, some of them still have the old Four Peaks as a school, which it's not a school. So, yeah, the board packet's gonna be the only, that and the site council minutes, when they update theirs. But for right now, until Power Schools can figure out their issue, we're just gonna stick with body counts so that we are putting out an accurate number.
And then that number is what we're actually submitting to the Department of Education?
I believe so, yes. So, it's based on actual like attendance and everything, so, okay. And then the other thing, I want to be transparent that, on the student activity, reports, that last month, Mrs. Settle actually asked why there were some accounts actually in the red, and we were told that starting with fiscal year, that those, you know, with the new fiscal year, that would be cleared up. I would just like finance to please, the next time we get these reports, bring them up to date. That we shouldn't, these reports are from June, and it's now September, so we should have a better reporting of these accounts. So I just would like to see them brought current, please.
And I just had a follow-up, a thank you, Alicia, for your late night response. I really appreciate it. It helped clear my mind coming in. I had two follow-up questions in regards to that. So one of them, the response regarding the negative numbers was because we didn't have proper budgets for our staff. During this current fiscal year, is our staff given a budget to work within, and are they all aware of that as of today?
They're normal within their budget meeting, usually when we close out the fiscal year. We're still cleaning up a lot of that. Tyler and I are working to clean it up, so they haven't put it in their official budget, but we do have one in mind, I know.
Well, I'm gonna go back. Yes, I have worked with Tyler on that, and the biggest one I have to meet with to start the year is Miss Wynn. And we've been working together on her budget for athletics. That is the one that hits the most. When it comes to principals, they are working through me. I am looking at every large purchase that comes through the district, and Alicia comes to me for approval on those. So, yes, that process is being finalized, but right now, if they need to purchase something, they need to go through me to get that purchase.
So nobody will have authority to do purchases on their own.
They can submit them, but Alicia comes to me and asks me if I'm going to approve it or not. And so I have been very clear about our expectations when it comes to what we're trying to do purchasing. Yes, we are, the goal is to give them a budget, but at the same time, we're so small that I think it works better to be able to say, these are my needs, this is what I would like to see done this year, and we budget around that versus here's a lump sum of money and use it how you need to use it. So we're trying to be as, fiscally responsible as we can, and we're also trying at the same time to grow enrollment and retain staff. It's a very complicated process, but I can assure you that all large purchases are coming. I've asked Alicia to bring them to me. If it's a new purchase, if it's maintenance and operations and it has to be repaired, obviously we get that repaired, and then I meet with John and we talk about it.
Thank you.
And one follow-up question. On the summary of operation reports then, when it's brought current, we will actually not see the closeout of last fiscal year where it's zeroed.
Correct, so you might see a beginning balance for July, not the zeros, but everything else will
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments regarding the reports? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the reports.
Oh.
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 I have Stugo here, and I haven't made any arrangements with Stugo to come and meet at meetings yet. So, I don't know what you want to do.
Can we make a public comment?
You know what, yeah, we'll hear from them during public comments, and actually this, we don't need to vote on this, sorry. All right, so.
Thanks for being here.
Public comments. I did, so. Okay. I'm going to, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Call to the public, this is the time for the public to comment. Time limits may be allocated on public comment at the discretion of the board president for the board to efficiently complete its business. The board reserves the right to prohibit any comments made in a discourteous or threatening manner. Complaints about specific individuals, students, or personnel are discouraged. Personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate staff member or administrator per district policy. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing the staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. We are going to discuss our public comment policy this evening. And I know today was kind of an odd situation that we weren't out here. So if you have a public comment and you were not able to submit it, could you please bring it forward? Thank you so much. But first, we're going to hear from Stugo because I always like to hear from the kids. Please tell us your name and what your title is and what year you are.
Hello, I'm Aiden Nguyen. I'm student body president, senior.
I'm Alden Kaz, senior and vice president for the senior class.
Welcome.
Hi. We have like our major event is obviously homecoming, and it's going to be the 23rd. The Spear Week is Monday's pajama day, Tuesday's beach day, Wednesday is dressed like your kindergarten. And Thursday is class colors, and Friday is dynamic duo. And then we have on the reason why the class colors switched is because Friday we're doing the buff puff or the powder puff, and Thursday is the game.
And that's this month?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And then Wednesday is the parade that runs throughout town, which I think is going to have a great turnout. We're actually going around the city, so I think that'll be good. Sugo has their own truck to go in there too, actually, for sophomores and juniors. Hopefully we can get our seniors and juniors, hopefully we can get sophomores and freshmen included too, but a lot of them have other clubs they're part of. And then senior day, our senior sunrise is going to be October 6th at 6 a.m. We partnered with Senior Taco to bring out some food for all the seniors who show up. I think it'll be a nice, just little commemorative event for the last sunrise of your senior year. And then later in the year, we'll have a senior sunset, which is to signal the end of our high school career, which I think is nice.
Also, it's like senior sunrise, like senior taco.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
so, like,
very creative.
And then that's pretty much it for this month at least.
Okay. Well, thank you so
Congratulations,
much.
first of all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to share that, thank you, Stugo, for all your work. And it was a request of mine that we bring the parade back to the Avenue of the Fountains. And I've done it before as principal, so now I'm doing it again. But appreciate you all making it a community event. And Ms. Wynn is, and Mr. Hartman are overseeing that. But the work has been done, and we moved the start time back a little bit on one of the nights to accommodate the board meeting, so.
Thank you.
I have to, real quick, I have to say thank you so much for working out having the parade on Avenue of the Fountains. At the Coffee with Hartman, I know it was discussed that we were not going to be able to do that this year. And everybody was really sad about that, so I thank you. That's huge.
And if you guys have homework, you can be excused, or you're welcome to sit here and listen. Then you go right ahead. Okay, next, now we'll get to the actual public comments. Nancy Ordowski. You'll have 3 minutes for each speaker. I'll give you a 30-second warning before your time ends.
Good evening. It's nice to be back here again. I just have a couple of suggestions or some things I know you can't answer for me right now. 2 or 3 meetings ago, there were a whole lot of $100,000 expenditures that you had to report on or vote for. Everything over $100,000. I'd ask or encourage you to put in the agenda the amount. There's a big difference between a $110,000 request and a $760,000 request. You can use the word approximate behind it, but for the public, I think it's really important for them to have some kind of idea how all of these things, what they cost. You mentioned enrollment. That was one of my other statements or questions. Once again, I think that that number should be in there. Every month, we should have a report of where enrollment stands. And once again, approximate can go behind it. Having worked in a school system, I know that it's a very floating number, but the public needs to know what kind of attendance we have. And then another comment is that I'm really glad that we have a board that asks questions and aren't just a yes team up here. I've had some people in the public say to me, well, there just shouldn't be so many questions. It takes too much time on the board. What I'm disappointed in is after 8 months of coming to meetings and everything, people aren't prepared to even answer the questions, and you should know they're going to be there. If you know what's in your agenda, you know you're going to have questions. So start putting that stuff and that information out there. I think it's really good that we don't have a yes board and that we're informing the public with the things that are going on in our school system. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just address 2 of your things because I can answer them factually. The $100,000, it's a procurement number, so we'd actually it's the ability to spend more than $100,000. So they're POs for ongoing maintenance. So we don't have a number. But it has to go through, right? It's a cumulative. It's the procurement law that has to be approved. So it's not a one-time purchase. And then the enrollment numbers are in all the board packets the very first meeting of the month, other than the summer. So,
I haven't opened up the board packets. I felt like and I have a feeling that very few citizens do. So,
sure.
I wouldn't hurt to have it just more available.
Absolutely. Thank you for your suggestion. I appreciate you coming. Next up is Sarah Kruger.
Madam President, board, and guests. While I was here last month at the board meeting, I was scolded for clapping. I was told this is not a sporting event. Apparently, you need the definition of what the clapping is for. The dictionary says to clap the hands to express approval. I don't see anything regarding sports being involved at all. This is a forum where you tell us how you are performing and what you are doing for us and what you are spending our tax dollars on. We have every right, because we are your bosses. We govern you. We are allowed to express our pleasure or displeasure when you're not doing what you're supposed to. The majority of this board has gone rogue in spending our tax dollars, and there are board members who don't think they have to follow the rules and get the bids, and they instead hire their buddies or previous people that they know will play with them. It was entirely appropriate for us to be glad that one of our board members was so courageous to speak up against the fact that these bids were being ignored. I had never met Madison before. I did not stand up for her because I knew her personally. I hadn't met her till after the meeting. So it was just a matter of right and wrong and following the rules and being responsible with taxpayer money. Luke 16:10 says, "He who is faithful in very little thing, it will be faithful in much. He who is dishonest in a very little thing is also dishonest in much." You don't want us questioning you on why you're not getting the extra bids, why you're using other people that are your buddies. But you know what? If you don't account for what you're spending, and then you turn around and you ask us to vote for bonds, do you think we're going to? No. We're watching.
Next up is Tara Lamar.
So everyone got lucky today because Brady has my computer for fantasy draft of some kind, so I couldn't sit there and dig in too deep. So I had one thing written out, and I decided to write something else just by the energy within this room. And so I wanted to start by quoting your supervisor, our supervisor, Steve Watson. Steve Watson says quite simply, school boards are nonpartisan. We know what that means, right? Nonpartisan means we shouldn't be promoting a political party. We shouldn't be voting based on political bias. They are nonpartisan. School boards also have a duty to empower the superintendent. Your job is to empower him, not to stricture him, not to put a guillotine over his head, to empower him to manage the schools and the teachers to effectively teach and the students to be supported in a thriving learning environment. If we look at, I'm just going to kind of go over a couple different places. There's so much. Our good old-fashioned Fountain Hills board member ethics, item 12. Remember always that board members' first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of the students attending the public schools. Our students' safety is their welfare. Having technology is their welfare. We have a duty for you to, one, stand as a body of one. That's another one of your duties. You're a body of one. This is not the Evil Dead where your hand is possessed. You are all together. If you vote together, if you don't vote together, the majority means you follow that duty. Should you ask questions? Absolutely. But you have a duty to act as one. It is your moral duty, it is your obligation as a school board member, and I think you're failing.
Thank you. Next up is Tammy Bell.
Good afternoon, President, Board, staff. I'm here as the director of the Fountain Hills Coalition today. Honestly, I was on my way home because I've been at the drug summit all day, and I got a phone call to say, hey, AYS is on the agenda for the school board. And I turned around and came in the parking lot so that I can say, yay, I am in full support of AIS, and I wanted to share that with you. I want to share that because, as you may not know, the coalition is made up of a collective force of our entire community, between 12 stakeholders and many more people that come from, like MCSO. I know many of you, I think all of you have been there. But MCSO, fire, the school district, the town of Fountain Hills, the medical industry, service industry, small businesses, and more. We all come together because we have a passion to have a drug-free community. And the coalition, of course, is the support for that and brings the community together so that we can work together on our efforts. We do that only because we have funds from national, federal, and local grants. Our federal grant specifically requires us to show the integrity of our program and everything that we do as a collective group in our community. And the only way we can do that is to show data. That's the only true way to show our integrity. And so we use AYS to show our impact. That's the only way we can say that this is what the kids know, and this is what they tell us they're doing, and this is what we want to do to make a difference. And it shows the differences from every couple of years when they do the survey. So we're in full support. We need data to sustain our efforts as a community through the coalition and through our sector leaders. And I just want to point out, it's free. It's really good data. And I don't know if you've ever been at a town council meeting when they're like, we need data, and it costs a lot of money for them to get consultants and to have people come in and tell us that our streets are awful or whatever it is that they're going to do the research on. This is free for us to hear from the mouths of our own babes, here, our students, to tell us what they think about drugs. And they may not be all that knowledgeable about the effects that we're seeing today, because those effects are changing dramatically over the last several years, and our drug problem is becoming much larger over the last several years. So we're here to inform, and we're here to find out the specific issues of our community, and we support AYS so that we can get that data and put our best efforts in where it really matters for our specific kids. Thank you.
Next up is Al Lorenz.
Good evening, board, staff, guests. I'm Al Lorenz. I chair the Pro Bond Advisory Committee, and I chair the Political Action Committee that can raise money for supporting the school bond. So first of all, I want to thank the school board for being so progressive and thinking forward around the investments we need in our school system. And more importantly, I also want to thank all the staff that makes this happen every day, Kane and all the people here, and the community members that support this. Just so you know, we have a group of around 40 people. That's just the committee. And I understand people are talking about spending money, but I also want to remind everyone, our taxes, our school taxes are some of the lowest in the area. We have a new website posted up, 1fh.org. You can go check. Scottsdale school taxes are already higher. If we pass this bond and you guys approve everything that is needed for the school, our taxes will still be lower than Scottsdale's with the $25 million bond. So I just want to let you know, we're excited, we're working hard, and we are looking for investments in Fountain Hills. And taxes is one of those pieces. You had great volunteers this year that helped paint this school, raise funds for the athletic field, but that's not sustainable for keeping our buildings repaired, and it's also not sustainable for investment. And we also understand that we're the #1 competitive state for open enrollment in Arizona. So some of these investments are going to be about competing in that environment so we can level the playing field. I'm excited to be leading this. I only know 2 people sitting up here. Dana, Mr. Fiscal Conservative that I've known for a long, long time because I've been in town 28 years. And Dr. J, because he coached my son in the first state championship for men's basketball in this town. And so I've known him for over 20 years. And the last thing, which is totally separate, and besides thank you, because it's a lot of hard work to do what you guys are doing. It's appreciated. And I know you represent all parts of the community. I get all of that. But the last thing is, one of the best things you could do very soon is extend his contract for another 3 years, because the continuity, the leadership, all the things that are being provided by him and his team are exactly what we need going forward. Thank you very much again for all the efforts you guys put into this. It's not always appreciated by everybody, I get that. And thank you, staff, for the work you put in. It's very important. Thanks.
Thank you. That's all the public comments I have here. We did receive an email, and as I stated earlier, our public comment will be up for discussion later. It really hasn't been typical that we read emails, but I will go ahead and read this one based on the fact that we read one at the last meeting as well. So until we discuss it and go over our policy, I'll go ahead and read it. It's from Larry Myers. It says, after attending the last meeting in which the total cost of the library project at the elementary school could not be ascertained, but was somewhere in the neighborhood of $700,000 plus, even with the donation of $100,000, I read the Gordian report total cost. Right off the top, it shows a backlog of $738,758.40. So I am having a hard time with the spending of $700,000 on a want, while there is a backlog of $738,758 in needs, and in the same breath asking the public to approve through an election a taxpayer-funded loan to the school for $25 million. I recognize this paid-for Gordian report which is in fact the light report, not extensive, is more or less estimates, or should at least be a guide for spending, wouldn't one think? It has been requested if there have been any payments on the previous bond due June of '23, but there has been no response. At last count in 2022, there will still be over $6.5 million left to be paid on the 2014 bond, which begs the question, why do we have a backlog and why wasn't it taken care of before spending on new projects? Fiscal accountability is required not only by taxpayers for loans they pay back for the school, but for ensuring long-term survival of the schools. This is but one glaring example of this practice not being followed. Would a deeper dive reveal more examples? Maybe take a look in the mirror along with the change in behavior is in order, rather than the spin and shaming exercise of those who point out these facts. At that point, maybe there is a proper number in which taxpayers would feel comfortable funding the district. Okay. That concludes public comments. We'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes the personnel action report, payroll vouchers, accounts payable vouchers, and donations. Do I have any questions or comments?
I move we separate the accounts payable vouchers.
Okay.
And I had a question in addition regarding the personnel action report.
Okay, hold on. Let's handle Madison's motion first. Madison moves that we separate out the account payable vouchers. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. That will be dealt with after the regular consent agenda. Libby, go ahead with your question on personnel, please.
I had two questions. One, we approved or up for approval is an employee that has listed twice additional workdays at elementary, one with the date of 7/25 and one with the date of 7/27. I just wanted additional clarification regarding this, if this particular employee was given additional workdays above and beyond everyone else, and if so, why? And then secondly, on August 16th, we approved additional workdays dated 7/31 of '23, while this meeting occurring after 8/16, we're approving additional workdays of 7/27. So the timing seems a little off to me. Just an explanation as to why that's happening.
Kaylee is not here. Kane, do you have any comments?
I would have to look into it. There could be that there was work with consolidation or something that was required. I see the two names on here, so I would have to ask her and get back to you on that.
And there's a couple that are on here twice, that for additional work days, so. And as for the dates, it could be when the employee submitted their request for reimbursement.
So I just want everyone to be clear that I'm not springing this question on during this board meeting. I'd actually asked it late last night in an email, and I just have not received a response. So again, just having that clarification would be great. So at this point, I don't know the impact, and maybe somebody could explain the impact of motioning to table this to our next meeting before approval.
Are they all at the elementary level?
That's elementary, yes, they're elementary.
So again, I'm not gonna speak in fact, because I don't know, but the fact that that school, the school itself had the most work to be done, and I would have to ask Kaylee why those people had additional days. I don't know if, can you answer that, Chris?
I don't know if I can 100% answer it. Alicia and I were just chatting, so those days that are listed, I think there's a reason why there are some individuals that are listed multiple times. The 25th, 26th, and 27th were optional work days for returning staff, and so they can come and elect to work hours, either individually or on their or with their teams. And so I think that's why some people are on there, say, on the 25th and the 27th, because they came in on the 25th and worked and on the 27th and worked. Again, I don't know for certain, but those dates align with those optional days.
Are there any other questions regarding the consent agenda?
I wanted to make a comment. It's so great to see the donations that come through. I don't know if I'm allowed to read this. It doesn't disclose anything, but it just says, donor saw that our mini fridge had stopped working. We used the fridge in the front office to hold waters for students and guests who may need a water. Donor gave a new mini fridge to the Fountain Hills High School. I love seeing stuff like that. We've got a great community.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone else that, I'm just asking.
There's one at the bottom. That was it.
But this one was dated 5/30,
Right,
so.
and then 7/27. Yeah, there was only one employee that was the 25th and 27th.
So if we would table this item, would our staff not be paid? Is that essentially what would happen? Okay. Then I motion that we table the personnel action report until our next meeting for clarification on those items.
I'll second. Okay, so I have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the personnel action report.
And the accounts payable.
Well, we've already motioned on that. So the consent agenda would only be the payroll vouchers and donations. That's the motion.
We need to take it off individually then and vote on it separately.
Okay, we'll just vote individually on each one. So there's a motion to table the personnel action report. I have a motion and a second on that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 4-1.
Jill, I'm sorry, who seconded?
Madison seconded,
Okay.
so, and that carries 4-1.
And who was the name?
Lillian.
Me.
And then payroll vouchers, do I have a motion on payroll vouchers?
I motion that we approve the payroll vouchers.
I second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the accounts payable vouchers. We'll go ahead and,
I have several things that I just had questions about. Some of those I can handle privately, so we don't take up a bunch of time. However, there was one that I found a little more concerning than others. There's on one of the check listings, it had $1,000 and it says petty cash. Can that be explained?
it was for the athletics, for the door.
Okay.
It said that on the voucher for petty cash for.
Okay, those are just the ones we got today, so I
Oh,
didn't
for
have time to go and
athletic-
look through
Yeah, it
everything.
said athletic gate.
Okay, not on just the check listing. And then the companies such as Pitney Bowes, they do our postage and some printing services, or, because I tend to see that company come up a lot.
We lease our postage machine, so we pay that fee every
Okay.
month, and then we do pay postage.
Okay, and there's not a way to own one and not have that recurring cost, or it's just too much to make that investment?
I can look into that, I'm not sure.
Okay, because that's just one that I see constantly, and some of the numbers are a little bit concerning. There was an Apple Inc. education for 11,000.
That was for the iPads, I imagine, for the middle school teachers, which we saved money by not doing smart boards. We saved about 30, I'd say roughly 3,000 a classroom by not doing smart boards and doing TVs with iPads instead.
Okay.
Could even be higher than that.
Okay, and then I saw that we made 2 payments to Orcutt Winslow. Have we reworked the contract to reflect the price change and the contract change for the new library total?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so can we get a copy, sorry, can we get a copy of that updated figure of what they're gonna be getting? Thank you. And then I have a decent list, but I think I could probably just ask Kane that in private, but I will not be voting yes on this because of that.
Go ahead. Just a point of clarification regarding the email, Alicia, regarding pediatric therapy. They still show on the list, so what happens with that?
When we void that check, it'll drop off of our list, so it isn't gonna show as a payment for that.
And then, unfortunately, I didn't have all of the check listings early enough today, and no fault of yours, I appreciate you sending them. I just had prior commitments this afternoon, so, because I was not able to look through them in the time frame that I received them today, my vote will be a no.
Okay, anybody else have questions regarding the accounts payable vouchers? Hearing none, I move that we approve the account payable vouchers.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 3-2, Krista. And I do appreciate you sending them, Alicia. I did go through all the checks. So. Next up is donations. Are there any questions regarding the donations? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the donations.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Krista, my only comment would be on the donation forms, could you please ask whoever's taking the donations to make sure that they fill them out entirely? Like there's one from 8-9 that doesn't say if it's a cash amount, non-cash value. So I'm assuming it's cash, but if they could make sure that they fill that out.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then I need help.
Thank you. Next up are action items. The first one is the 23-24 board meeting schedule, updating the meeting time. We had discussed this at our last meeting, that we would be doing away with the work study session. From now on, board meetings will just be board meetings. That will give us the ability to discuss items and then 2 weeks later vote on them. So on the adjustment, all meetings would change to 6 o'clock unless there's an executive session, with the exception of the September 20th meeting in 2 weeks, because that's the night of homecoming. So we left that at 5 o'clock so that the board could participate after the meeting in the homecoming parade. So, are there any questions? Hearing none, I move that we update the board meeting schedule and time.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
4-1, Krista. Next up is the professional staff evaluation handbook. We had talked to Kaylee about this at our last meeting. She did a great job putting together the handbook. I appreciate that the old stuff was left in there and she put her new items in red so that you could see what the comparison is. Are there any questions regarding the new handbook?
I have one. I have what counts as a qualified evaluator? Who counts as a qualified evaluator?
We approved
You
those.
approved those earlier this year.
Okay, it's that list, okay.
Are there any other questions regarding the staff evaluation handbook? Hearing none, I move that we approve the professional staff evaluation handbook.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the updated extracurricular fees, adding in the Fountain Hills Middle School yearbook and sports clubs. Those fees, again, are added to the schedule in red. It adds in volleyball, basketball, track, baseball, and softball club fees to the middle school. On the trimester, it's $25 a trimester, and then the yearbook club will be $25 per year. I'm really excited that they have a yearbook club. I always thought that was great. You know, the high school students used to do the yearbook for the high school, and I know over time staff has kind of taken that on, but I was on the yearbook staff at my high school, and I just think it's a great thing for kids to put that together. It teaches them to be creative, to do, editing and design, so I'm really happy to see that on there. So,
Plus, we wanted more clubs, right?
more clubs, that's right, more clubs. Are there any questions regarding the updated extracurricular fees? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
I move we approve the extracurricular fees.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll just do information discussion items. The first one is the Beyond Textbook presentation date. It's been requested that the board get a presentation and a little training on Beyond Textbooks. At first, we were going to do like a separate training, but now it sounds like it would just be beneficial if we did it during a board meeting. So I just was looking for suggestions from the board if there was a date that fit everyone's need that you'd like to hear from Beyond Textbooks.
I thought it had been scheduled for the 20th.
No,
When, weren't we? Oh, okay.
it hasn't been scheduled at all.
So is it a staff member that will be presenting?
I believe it's Dr. J and maybe a couple of staff members filling in with him.
Possibly, yes.
So I would just request that we look at the staff members' schedules and make it work with them.
Dr. J, do you want to talk to your staff and come back with?
Yeah, I will definitely talk to them. There are several teachers that have used it with great fidelity and have done good work, so it's just a matter of seeing if they'd be willing to come present. So I will give you some dates and go from there.
Okay. Yeah, the 20th, we're going to keep the meeting as short as possible just so because of the homecoming parade, and we don't want to drag staff in here when they're trying to do the homecoming parade too. Does that make sense? Okay. Are there any questions or any suggestions regarding the Beyond Textbooks presentation? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move on to Regulation JJE. Regulation JJE is regarding fundraising. Hang on, I lost my place here. Okay. It's regarding club fundraising. It says any fundraising activities require approval by the principal prior to the activity. All of the activities must be consistent with adopted policies related to student activity funds. Participation shall be governed by the following criteria. The aim of the activity shall benefit youth in educational, civic, social, or ethical development, and a student club cannot hold a raffle or lottery to raise money. There's no gambling in our schools. All monies collected by student groups shall be deposited into the student activity fund. Records shall be kept for each group, and the monies must be used for the benefit of the school and the students, and only as specified in the USFR. The treasurer for the student activity fund shall provide to the club sponsors a receipt for each deposit. Student activity funds cannot be expended without approval of the student club under the guidance of the principal and the sponsor of the activity. Fundraising activities must not conflict with regular school activities, and the governing board will approve annually the allowable student fundraising categories. Are there any questions regarding this regulation? Dr. J, do you have any comments on this regulation?
No, we researched several different regulations and feel that this meets our needs.
Sorry. My iPad's apparently done. So. Any questions?
I did notice that the school is all one word, so there needs to be a space in there. But I think
Oh,
that's great. And then we haven't seen a list of allowable student fundraising categories yet, have we? Are we gonna be doing that at some
It'll
point?
be at the next
Next
meeting, we
okay.
needed to get the regulation in place.
Okay,
The regulation basically keeps us in line with what our auditors are expecting of us, so.
perfect, thank you.
And only policies need approved by the board, not regulations, so this was just an information item.
Okay.
So the one you see that comes for voting will actually be the policy.
Which will include
It'll-
the allowable,
Well, it's not the policy, it'll be the fundraising.
Yeah, we'll follow the policy and it will just be the list of categories that will be allowed to fundraise.
Right.
at
Okay.
the school.
perfect.
Okay. Next up are the supplemental reading materials. Everybody received the book list. Are there any questions regarding the proposed books?
When do they go off of review?
Oh, they've been off for a while, since I want to say mid-August, maybe August 17th, I don't know the
Yeah.
exact date.
So we put the list online, correct, for people to see, and then we also have them on display somewhere, or is it just a list?
They're on display.
Okay.
And an email went out to all families. I did have people and instructed in that email to contact me if they had any questions. I did have a few people reach out to me and want the list sent to them, and I sent it to them.
And have we had any concerns submitted? Okay.
I was in there one day and waiting between meetings and read through some of them quickly, and some were really, really good. I personally liked the one in Spanish and English. That was really adorable.
I just want to clarify that all the books that come to you are going to be recommended by the literary committee that we've created. They go through and take a look at the books and lexile levels and go through a bunch of different factors, and then they make the recommendation, and then from there it goes on display. And then from there, you ultimately make a decision if that book is to go into our libraries or into our novel rotation.
Do you know how many people are on the literary committee?
There's about 5 that signed up.
And are they parents, teachers, staff members?
It's staff.
It's all staff?
Yeah, it's something, just an extra step we created to ensure that it doesn't fall on one person to recommend, and it's, these are primarily English teachers, librarian, that, take the time to read them, go through them, and vet them.
Is the committee open to parents or community members, should they want to join?
It's just a local, just something I'm trying to do to give us additional feedback. I don't feel comfortable a lot of times. I don't have time to read all the books and go through them, so I've created this group to do that and then present that back to the community and to you so that you guys can make a decision based on that.
So at this time, it's just open to staff?
Yes. But the committee gets their feedback when they are on display for 60 days to come and check them out.
Are there any other questions regarding the supplemental reading materials? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to policy advisory 744 to 747. I'm not going to read through all of these policies. I won't have a voice. Policy advisory number 744 is policy IGA curriculum development. Policy advisory 745 is curriculum adoption. Policy 746 is textbook supplementary material selection adoption. And policy 747 is a policy regulation and exhibit that all refers to medicines and administering medicines to students. We can go through them one by one, or if somebody has specific questions, we can talk about them.
I have a question. Why did we feel the need to remove the word board from meetings of board authorized textbook selection committees? Because isn't that what subjects it to open meeting law?
These are policy,
Yeah,
these are updates from,
These are not us.
Okay, but So then can we agree to not remove board from,
Which one are you talking about?
both from curriculum development and curriculum adoption?
On IGA and
Um,
IGD.
Yes. It says meetings of board authorized textbook selection committees shall comply with open meeting law requirements. However, if you remove board authorized, technically the superintendent committees are the ones that are not subject to open meeting law. So I feel that we need the board in there.
Can you give me 1 second on that? Because I
Sure.
did get an email from ASBA in regards to that. If you give me 1 second, I can look at that.
Okay. And then will you maybe forward that to us as well if it's pertinent?
So while she's looking that up, I have a follow-up question. So our current policy says board authorized textbook selection committees.
It doesn't, actually. I looked at policy IGA, I don't know if I printed it out.
I can look real quick.
But, oh, no, that's JJE. Oh, I know, I tried to print it out. It wouldn't
Yeah,
print
usually the
properly.
underlined portion is the changed portion, which that is underlined, but then the word board is crossed out.
Correct.
So I would suggest we adopt it with the word board left in there.
Are you on policy bridge?
Okay.
So policy IGA.
So, in May of 2023, ASBA amended policies IGA, IGD, and IJJ to comply with open meeting law requirements for curriculum development, adoption, and textbook material selection adoption. The May advisory stated that all board authorized policies shall be subject to open meeting law. The statute, 15-721/722, simply says authorized. Thus, the policy is amended to delete the word board. While it is true that all superintendent committees are technically board authorized by policy, it is unnecessarily confusing to add the word board to authorized because it creates the misconception that a superintendent created committees do not need to follow open meeting law, which they may under that statute. Does that help?
Yeah, yes, but unfortunately, I think we need to do a deeper look into. Yeah, so our policy IGA does not match the policy that ASBA sent us, where they even made the change. It doesn't match either way. So, let's see, all curriculum changes. So it doesn't have in their meetings of board authorized textbook selection committees shall comply with open meeting law requirements. Ours says the board authorizes the superintendent to develop the curriculum for the school system and to organize committees to review the curriculum. All curriculum changes shall be approved by the governing board.
Yeah, so the part that is underlined is being added to the policy. That's why it's not in our policy.
Gotcha.
But the email that was sent to me, this alert, is stating that they have crossed out board and left it as just authorized because of the open meeting law.
So they're adding the underlined section,
Correct.
but then
Being added to
with
our-
adding it, they've also deleted a word
Yes.
of their new section.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Way to make it confusing.
I'm honestly more concerned that it's because we were not in compliance with the statute beforehand, because we
It's
were
not-
under
it's-
the impression that superintendent committees were not subject to open
So it's
meeting
not
law.
us, this is
No.
sent to everybody.
I understand, but I'm saying, is that why this is being corrected, is because it did not meet the
I think
statute?
it's been corrected because there's been more questions about textbook adoption. And so when we went through this last year, as I shared, their policy just wasn't, there wasn't a lot there. So they're cleaning that up. And that's why Mr. Hartman's committee has had the agendas posted and gone through all that process to be in compliance with the law. But ASBA, as my understanding, is just coming to a final policy a little later than possibly they should have.
Okay.
But that's why we paused last year to make sure we weren't in violation. And as a result of that, we still have issues at the elementary we have to resolve this year as far as the textbook adoption. So, and Chris is working with both principals on the textbook adoption process.
And I don't disagree with you, Madison, regarding the board, but if you actually take the board out and it just says meetings of authorized textbook selection committees, it puts them all out there, as opposed to just ones that are done by the board.
Which I think is important because, like I said, I was under the impression that the superintendent committees were not open to open meeting law. And I'm not gonna say that I got that impression from something specifically with our district, because I'm not exactly sure where I
I
got
think
that
we were all,
impression.
I think we were told that.
That's what I thought, so
So-
I just didn't wanna say it in
So
case that
this
we
may
weren't.
change.
But, so then we also might need to review our committee policy, because if we have it somewhere in our committee policy that's different than this, that's why I would want the word board in there, so our
Can I
committee
just
policy needs to.
recommend that we bring this to Dave and get clarification and bring it back?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's just a discussion item
Oh,
anyway,
sure,
so.
okay.
Okay, so,
And just to follow back up on your comment, Madison, yes, our literary committee is not.
I was gonna ask, is it open to is
Well,
it
we
subject
just-
to
it's
open meeting
not.
law?
We try to work with our community any way we can, and that's what I'm saying. So there's safeguards in that process for the community to have input, right? And that's what we're always going to be able to do that. That's a goal of mine, is to make sure they have that opportunity, so yes.
okay, so yeah, if you can just run this by Dave, Krista, send it to him and ask him regarding the section where it says board, and then please send that on to, his response on to the board, so that we're prepared at our next meeting if we need to make changes or vote.
And will you
Okay, so
please,
that's gonna be for both IGA and IGB.
Correct.
and then will you also send us that email from ASBA that,
Yes.
thank you.
Was that from Ballotpedia? Is that the,
The email,
yeah,
it came from Renee Watson.
oh, okay. Because I know I get them from Ballotpedia that update me as well, so. Okay, are there any comments or questions regarding the administrating, yeah, medicines and administering medicines to students?
No.
Do we have EpiPens on site or no?
I would have to check with the nurses on what they stock, but I'm pretty certain they do, but again, I don't want to say that and be wrong, I'd have to double check, but my understanding is yes, they do. A lot of students provide them and have them with the nurse, but I believe we do have them as a backup, but I just have to double check.
When my son had an EpiPen, I had to bring it in, so.
Well, but I guess the further clarification is being asked because if we elect to stock auto-injectable EpiPens, the school site personnel need training. So
Correct.
the follow-up would be, are we documenting training or are we providing that training?
So can you please find
Yeah.
out from the school nurse if we have them, and if so, have they been trained? And is it just the nurse that, if they are trained, is it just the nurse?
It actually says.
Two people, I think.
It
Well,
it
that's-
actually says on page 140, the top, if we seek to stock them, the superintendent shall require all school site personnel to receive an annual training on them. So just to make sure we're not putting undue stress or not, if we have them and we're not training.
Do you all receive any training on EpiPens? No. Okay, so if we stock them, then we need to make sure our staff's being trained.
Do you want that coming back as inside discussion since we don't have that information?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to the Arizona Youth Survey. You all heard Tammy Bell speak on behalf of the coalition regarding the data that they collect from the Arizona Youth Survey to use on how kids are using tobacco, vaping, drugs, etc. Are there questions regarding that survey?
So my question, and I wasn't aware that you would get a copy of our results, so who or what other organizations get a copy of the surveys that would be done?
I actually asked that today of the Department of Justice, so, or defense. It depends on the data that we get, and so it depends on ask for just Fountain Hills School District data, it is proprietary to the school. It can be shared only in permission of the school to the coalition, but it's not necessarily shared outside of that in advertising or marketing or in any other way. It's only used to strategize how we go about doing our prevention mechanisms. If we ask for zip code data, then it's not school-specific data. So we get kids who say my zip code is 85268 or 85269 in the post office box, and then we get that data and it's considered community data and does not have that same proprietary, mechanism in the school. So then we could use it. However, our only goal is to use it for our own efforts, to create our action plan and make sure that we're measurable. So that's the answer I got from them today. It really depends on how much we clarify as to what data we're looking for.
So that would be up to us to determine whether or not we run it as a zip code or school, even though we're doing it at the school
Yeah, you could
level.
ask either. And I actually said, just from my personal opinion, I would love to have both, because I would love to see if our school-specific data, it varies at all with our community data, because that might tell us if the issue is specific to our community, or if there's an influence outside of our community that's coming into our kids.
And then you mentioned the grant funding was tied to the survey. So is the information then shared with whoever is providing the grant funds?
Let me clarify. We use that to show measurements. So the grant funding is, we have to have tools to measure it. So we could choose other tools. We could do our own surveys, or we could use what's provided to us by the state. So in years past, we always provided the AYS for that data, and it's been a very good measuring tool for us. We haven't had to use other tools. If we weren't allowed to, then we would have to find something else, and it would probably require us asking for more surveys and more input from our parents and our students in other ways.
So you don't share the results of the survey specifically, you just shared your measurable data, like, oh, we have educated this many students to this percentage or whatever.
You can see
Okay.
it on our website. You'll see from like 2018 to 2020 data that we have so far, there was, a decrease in 38% of nicotine use or vaping. And so we use as broad numbers to show the effects of our prevention mechanisms.
I'm going to ask you another question. So in the past, the coalition has come to the school for these surveys. Is that how it's worked in the past? And then this year, we're actually seeking out the deep survey through ASU? Or what is the difference this year than in the past?
I don't think there is a difference. ASU works with the state and does the data evaluation with them, and they provide it both to the school and to coalitions.
When the students do this, is it online and are the results uploaded to Arizona State University as well? Like, what kind of platform is it administered on? And I mean, obviously that is data collection, so that's got to be stored somewhere.
To my knowledge, the 2024 will be the first one that is completely online. They're very excited about that. They look a little bit more numbers. Kids tend to start using the paper and they get bored of it, and then they start showing invaluable data, or they don't finish the survey. And so they feel like they're going to get more accurate data now that it's going to be online.
And another follow-up, and I don't know, I think this might be to Mr. Alexander or Dr. J. So again, it says if a student does not wish to participate, it's voluntary. And then in another section up above, it discusses that a letter will be sent home. Sorry, I lost
The letters.
The letter will be a standard letter to notify parents of the survey, and it allows the parents to request that their child not participate. I thought this last year, the statute changed and the surveys are now opt-in versus opt-out. So will we be providing an opt-in signature for the parents for the survey?
May I speak to that?
Yeah, sure.
I asked for that clarifying question.
Thank
today.
you.
At the Drug Summit, the legislation actually went around that with AYS and said AYS is the only one that is
Thank you. Thank you.
Tammy, are you able to provide any documentation or legal precedent for that, just so that we know that we're covered?
Which one? I asked them specifically, and I asked him for the actual legislation title, so I should be getting my email.
Thank you.
He didn't have it at the top of the text.
Yeah, I know, that's,
Because I asked that too, I said, I heard, but can you tell me exactly when? And he's like, yes, I can.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions regarding the Arizona Youth Survey? I just want to thank you, Tammy, for everything the coalition does. Having the coalition in Fountain Hills has been so helpful over the past years, and you guys are just doing amazing work, and I appreciate that.
And thank you for taking over.
Yes, congratulations on your new position. All right, next up is the pickleball lighting project. Dr. J, do we have anyone here from pickleball, or would you like to speak to this?
We do.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I'm Diane Newcomb, and I'm Vice President of Fountain Hills Pickleball Club. Our president, Jan Goodman, couldn't be here this evening. She had a prior engagement. So I'm here to just ask you, provide you with a little bit of information about the lighting project. The pickleball courts, the original footprint was basketball courts that were converted over, and they have very large poles over 50 feet tall with big sodium lights on them. And we put in 2 additional courts a few years back with your permission, and they have the lower standard kind of tennis court lights, they're LEDs. And what we are hoping to get permission to do is to convert the large sodium lights that are on the west side of the school over to LED lights. They won't be the lower lights like are on the newer courts, but they would be similar to the lights that were put in at the Golden Eagle baseball fields. They were all recently converted over to LED. So when we saw they were changing the lights out up at the Golden Eagle Park, we walked up and asked them, because we've been looking for someone to try to address how we can convert over, and couldn't find anybody that would go up that kind of distance to change the outlets, the fixtures. And they provided a contact for us. We reached out to them, we got a quote. That quote is somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 to change those lights out. The Pickleball Club would fully fund that. There would be no cost to the school at all. All we would need to do is to work with someone in maintenance at some point when the school is closed to have access to get to the poles that are on school property. So that's really the benefit of the lights. They're LEDs, so they should be more energy efficient. They will be create less glare. The other ones kind of have these big domes, and so the surrounding neighbors and things get some glare from the light fixtures, and we'd like to be able to reduce that as well. So that was kind of the proposal. If we can get some kind of a decision, it's about 10 to 12 week lead time for them to make the fixtures. We were hoping to maybe be able to do it over your Christmas break, so school wouldn't be in session, and if not, we'll have to wait until next summer. So that's the lighting project. Any questions? No?
So Jill, is it something that we have to wait? We can't vote today?
We are not voting today.
We have to do a second time?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. And the next item that was on your agenda, if you'd like me to proceed, was the extension of our terms of use agreement with the school. Currently, we have a terms of use agreement that ends the December 31st, 2026. And the club is putting huge capital investment into the clubs. We spent approximately $40,000 so far this year resurfacing the courts. If the light project gets approved, it'd be another $35,000 to $40,000. So in our member survey that we just recently completed, quite a few members asked if there was a way that we could try to secure an extension to that because of the huge capital investment that we're making. So the proposal is that you would consider extending that terms of use agreement. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when the board, I was on the board when the original facilities use agreement was done. And one of the questions that I had asked is that if there were off times, that there were other community members who weren't part of pickleball that could use the courts. And at that time, I was told yes, which is the only reason that I voted for it. And over the past couple of years, we've gotten several emails of angry community members that say that they've been locked out and the only people that can use those pickleball courts now are pickleball club members. Is that true?
That is true. We became a 501c7. We registered with the Arizona Commission. And the requirement of the 501c7 for tax purposes, obviously, to be exempt for taxes, is that it is a club and membership. That's the overriding regulation for the 501c7. So it has to be a limited membership, and that membership is controlled annually. We have people that have asked, there's a cap on the number of people in the club just so that the courts don't get overcrowded and then nobody's satisfied because they can't get playtime. But it is a requirement for our club that it be a closed membership. It's not open to the public because then there would be no tax advantage that we could have for not having to pay taxes.
But you understand that wasn't the original agreement, right? That when this originally came to the board, I didn't want it closed off to the public. Those are public courts that belong to the school district.
We didn't become a 501c7 until 2 years ago.
Right, but then that basically changed the terms of the agreement after we had already approved it, that when it was approved, it was specifically asked if other community members weren't going to be able to use that court, and we were told yes, so our decision was based on that. And then because you became a 501c3, it changed the terms, and now you've locked out community members that we were told we're still gonna have access to that.
Well, the pickleball club is the one that's paying for the maintenance of the courts, all of the costs associated with running the pickleball courts. So to have it open to the public, there are other public pickleball courts in Mountain Hills. So the public has the opportunity to play elsewhere.
Right, but those are still FHUSD property, and that's where we get into a bind, because technically that facility is still taxpayer money. And so it becomes an issue when we have residents that come to us and say, how can you let a private club take over a facility that's paid for by taxpayer dollars?
Okay, and so
I'm just letting you know.
I mean, the club can't sustain itself without the money from the membership. So
Sure.
to have everyone able to join isn't feasible. So
Just sharing what has gone on the
I
past
have
couple of
seen
years.
the
so-
emails. I fully understand.
Right, so, you know,
Okay.
as a board, we have to look out for the whole community, and that becomes an issue. So-
Okay, very good.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the public comment policy. I've asked for this to be put on the agenda based on some emails that we've received. Up until COVID, the board never accepted email public comments. We've checked with other districts, and it's uncommon for email comments to be read during the call to the public. So I just wanted to have a discussion on the board regarding our stance on that. So, and I will say that I have fought for public comment when boards have asked to limit them, change them, outlaw them. I'm always happy to hear from the public, but I do appreciate when there's actually someone standing in front of us as opposed to just reading an email.
I wanted to make a comment too, because I remember when I was a commenter one time that Wendy made the suggestion to get rid of public comments due to the feeling that it was unfair to people that emailed in, since those weren't read and they weren't considered, especially since a lot of those are not meant to be read. And you did stand up for that, and I thanked you for that at that time, because I think it's very important that we keep the opportunity to hear from our constituents and people that are interested in paying attention. I think that that's really important for us. The other comment that I had is, I believed it was common practice that we did not read emailed comments. And the first time that that happened was actually in support of the field when you read Tara's comment. And so I think that's when it started to be that we needed to consider it, because if we're going to do it, we need to do it consistently. We can't make exceptions for people that we know or for things that we support. So I'm fine with it being either way, because I also agree there's an added level of accountability to the commenter as well when they have to come and stand and say what they want to say, and they can't just email it and hide behind a computer. I think that it takes a lot of courage to come in and say things, and I think that that's great that we have community members that care that much.
I do too, and you're right, it was Tara's email. It was, like I said, it wasn't until COVID that we even kind of talked about it. But, now it's becoming more common, and so I just feel like we need to revisit that. I think I've been fair that the comments that have come in, I've read them, even though they're not in support of things that I believe.
I appreciate that.
But just like with Mrs. Rodowski tonight, that she had a couple of things, it gives us the opportunity to answer some factual things, as opposed to just someone who sends us an email and then to read it and not really be able to comment on some things that maybe not are accurate. So I would like the board to consider that the only public comments that we take are the ones that are here before us, as opposed to email. And then currently we have a policy that if it's not submitted within, I think it's 5 minutes prior to the board meeting, that we don't accept it. I'm not, I'm flexible on that. Just like tonight, it was kind of an odd thing. We're not at, Krista's not at her table. I always want to hear from the public, good or bad, chastising or supporting. I always want to hear what the public has to say. It doesn't mean I'm going to agree, but I do want to hear from them. So.
I tend to agree with that. I'd rather we wouldn't start reading all the emails that we get. I think it's better to have people right here talk to it. What I want to make sure is that we do adhere to people turning in a request to speak 5 minutes before. I understand if today was different, so if somebody comes at the last minute, but I definitely would not want to say that during the meeting, somebody could ask to speak. That I want to make sure we don't do at all.
Well, they would have to be in before the public comment section, so we're not going to accept them after, but to me, if it's in before the public comment section starts, I'm fine accepting it.
That's kind of how I feel, as long as they can get it to Krista before public comments begin. I think it would be okay to accept, although I do understand that there's some, we keep those though, so that she can enter the information afterwards.
Right, and I don't call for, she doesn't give them to me until I ask for them on the public comment, so I'm fine taking them up until the public comment section.
So I had a couple of comments. One, I appreciate the emails that I receive as a board member. I think there's a couple concerns if we go the route of allowing emails. One, we can't verify the identity of the speaker. And two, it could be longer than our 3-minute time limit. So that puts us in a bit of a predicament. But I would still encourage those who want to write emails to send emails. We're reading them. My second comment is on page 172. That is the regulation. It says we only allow 15 minutes for public commentary. I know that there's been times we have gone over that, and I would probably like to see that time limit changed or optional wording added.
And I'm fine taking that out, because again.
It does also say just after that, this time period may be extended at the option of the board president or upon by request by 3 board members. So that we do have that piece in there to allow for it to go longer.
But I'm never gonna.
What we're here for.
Right, I'm never gonna hold the 15 minutes because it goes against my belief that we're here to hear from the public. So, but you're right, I'm not always gonna be president, so. All right, so 15 minutes.
This is a regulation. Can we mark it up the way we want it now so I can present it to you guys via email and we can
Sure.
put it into action?
So, we would like a section that says that all public comments must be in person. that we would like to take out the 15 minutes will be allocated. But you can wordsmith something that says that, just like we do, that time limits may be allotted based on the board being able to perform its business. And then I would say that all requests for public comments must be to you prior to the public comments section. I'm not going to adhere to that 5-minute.
I think the only problem with that wording is that later on in the regulation, it talks about public commentary. And if as a board, we would decide to allow public comment with each agenda item, that could get sticky. So just ensuring that the wording as far as when to hand in your public comment form is not contrary to the public commentary portion.
So that all forms have to be in by the public comment section, the call to the public. Prior to that section.
I don't know, I could see leaving the 15 minutes because we can always, it says on there that we can extend it if we need to.
Yeah, but it also says that it's really at the board president's discretion, or it requires 3 board members. And
I think if we just take out those first 2 sentences where it just says the purpose of this allocated time is to call to the public, is to afford the opportunity for any individual to address the board on matters not on the agenda. And then it says if more than one person desires to address the board, the time will be allocated proportionally.
And I'm fine with that.
The board president should also set a time limit for individual speakers. I think that kind of covers everything but leaves it flexible enough.
So you don't want me to add anything that says time limits may be allotted so the board can conduct business or something wrong with that?
Well,
I think it already says that.
Yeah, it kind of already.
It says the time will be allocated if more than one person wishes to address the board, the time will be allocated proportionally. So the board president shall set a time limit for individual speakers. So that's
Yeah,
already in
so
there.
I think the main thing that needs added is that we will only accept in-person comments.
And take out the 5 minutes. Are there?
May I specifically state no emails will be accepted?
Correct.
Or read?
Yes.
No emails will be read?
Right. That the board will personally read their emails, but they're not read in the public forum.
Are we able to have an option for people to submit written comments in person if they're not able to stay to have it read?
Well, they would still have to come fill out that form.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
I just know there's been, as a commenter, again, there was times where I had to leave and that would have been a nice option.
Well, I still think that, like Libby said, it still is questionable as to what they want to say. Is it in the 3 minutes, and is it really the person that filled out that form?
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments regarding the public comment? Okay, hearing none. Future agenda items. We still need to go over the superintendent goals. I still want to have a budget discussion that Libby has asked for. We still will get the state testing results. There will be a presentation on that. And then the board approval of fundraisers that we had talked about during the regulation.
Can I also real quick request that, I know you asked if you wanted procurement on there. I do want a discussion on procurement, but not on the guidelines of procurement, but more our practices dealing with procurement. Thank you.
Are there any other agenda items that people would like to see on the agenda? Okay, if you come up with anything, please feel free to email myself, Krista, or Dr. J. Dates of upcoming meetings, September 20th, please remember that will be a 5 o'clock board meeting. And then October 4th, we will move to the 6 o'clock board meeting.
And with that, I move we adjourn.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye.